Welcome. I'm Cara King, president of the Academy for Surgical Coaching and a minimally invasive gynecologic surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic. What you're about to watch is part of Mastery in Motion, the 2026 Expert Insights series from the Academy for Surgical Coaching. It's a year-long series built around one idea: that surgical excellence is not a destination. It's something you develop intentionally, continuously throughout a career. Each session in this series takes on a different dimension of that work. Today's conversation is one I think you'll find genuinely useful, whether you're thinking about your own performance, your team, or how you develop surgeons in your program. You don't have to watch these in order. Each one stands on its own. But if you want to go deeper, the full series is available at surgicalcoaching.org, where you can also find all the ways the Academy can support you directly. Because that's really what we're here for, not just to talk about surgical coaching, but to make it available to you. If you've been curious about working with a coach, this is a good moment to look into it. If you've ever thought about becoming a coach yourself, our training program can get you there in about 6 hours with CME credit and formal certification. Whatever brought you here today, I hope what you're about to hear gives you something worth taking back to your work. Let's get started. Before we dive in, I'd like to thank our sponsor for today's session, VitVio. VitVio is on a mission to help hospitals run at peak efficiency. They use computer vision and ambient sensing to create a real-time 3D digital twin of the operating room, automating documentation, coordinating teams across peri-op, and giving surgical teams back their time so they can focus on what's most important, the patient. We are so grateful for their support of our surgical coaching community. You can learn more at vitvio.com. That's vitvio.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to our Expert Insight series. Today, we are here to talk about coaching for surgical efficiency. When we think about surgical efficiency, a lot of our brains go to this space of increased volume, quicker cases, quicker turnover. But when you really break it down, that's not what performance science is telling us that we should be looking at. True efficiency isn't about doing more, but it's really looking at the people, the teams, the system that we're in. And especially within the Academy for Surgical Coaching, where we coach for performance coaching, we believe performance is trainable. It's a coachable type of attribute. It's not like you have it or you don't, which is where we really place a lot of our emphasis is on this area of performance coaching. So today I am really excited to have Dr. Shah today with us, and she's going to talk a lot about performance coaching in the line of streamlining workflows, improving team dynamics, and really improving surgical efficiency at large. Ami, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Cara. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this.
You are the perfect brain to dive into. You're all the things that I want to tap into. So here we go. I can't wait.
Thanks.
So today I want to talk about, again, really framing the space of surgical efficiency and kind of breaking boundaries of what maybe we think it is at baseline. So just for an initial grounding, when you hear surgical efficiency, where do you think surgeons' brains go? And where do you think we potentially go wrong when we think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were giving your intro, this totally came to me as well, is that I think we think as surgeons that you're either efficient or you're not. And it's some sort of like innate skill you have or you don't have it. I think that we often have a really fixed mindset that it's not something that we can learn or improve or grow. And probably some of that comes from our residency, and some of that may, for those of us in academic institutions as well, where either like, oh, that person gets it or they don't, not realizing that there's a lot of ability to quote unquote learn or get it.
I think you're nailing it. It almost becomes more of our identity of like, that surgeon's efficient, that surgeon's not. And then it follows them throughout their career. And it's so not right in regard to the lens that we should be looking at people. And, you're making me think about surgical coaching when people come to us. Like, how many people come to you on me when you're like, okay, great, welcome to our coaching session. What are your goals today? And people are like, to be more efficient. Do you hear that a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always ask, what is efficient? And they're like, well, it's that famous quote from one of the justices of the Supreme Court. Like that quote about pornography, when you see it. But like,
Yes.
how can you aim towards this goal when you don't even know what the goal is? And you're letting other people define what efficiency is for you.
I love this. And you can't scale something that is a gestalt.
Yes. Yeah. And we wonder why people don't feel like they fit in, or they feel like they're imposters in the operating room, or they have this whole phenomenon going because they're trying to get to this goal that they don't even know when they'll reach that goal or have a measurable thing to say I'm quote unquote efficient, except for, oh yeah, everyone thinks I'm efficient. What do you think of yourself?
Exactly. And, I think you're bringing up a really good point about quote unquote efficiency metrics, like quicker turnover, or whatever those metrics are. They're oftentimes imposed on the surgeon or imposed on the team without a two-way conversation around that. And I think that when you actually put a coaching mindset or framework around that, it changes those metrics. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, we like to think of ourselves as leaders in the operating room, and we are. And I mean, at the end of the day, the responsibility for that patient, the responsibility for how that patient does, to a certain extent, we're not God, we can't control everything, but to a large extent, is in our hands, and we are responsible for it, and we understand and take on the responsibility, and we're really grateful and, honored to be able to do that. But, and this is the big but, what does that efficiency mean to us? Is the surgeon that takes 5 minutes longer than someone else but has better outcomes, are they more efficient? Are we really going on hospital metrics and cost savings, RVU-based things to quantify our efficiency? I think there's a lot of room for us to define that for ourselves, but the way sort of the corporatization of healthcare is, we don't have that space or that time, or no one gives us the ability to define that and then go back and talk to administration about, this is what efficiency means for me. This is what being part of a team means to me. This is what leading the team looks like to me.
Exactly. I feel like we're so siloed, right? That's probably where a lot of this comes from. The other thing I'm thinking about is efficiency from the technical box, right? I'm thinking about the boxes that we have through the academy, where we have performance being technical or non-technical, or stress management or communication. And when people come to us for coaching, they oftentimes think, I want to minimize my instrument exchanges, or I want to be faster with autonomy or a certain part of the procedure. In your mind, what areas outside of technical impact efficiency in the operating room?
Yeah, absolutely. When we're not having a coaching conversation, we make a lot of assumptions. And I think we assume that we understand the other person's job and that they understand what we're trying to do. And when we approach it differently from a coaching lens, we're much less in that instructional thing, like, this is what I think you should be doing, this is how I think it should go, this is how you can help me. But when we approach it from that curiosity lens, we can be like, hey, this part isn't working for me. What on your side is inhibiting you from helping me in this way? Or, hey, let me explain this operation to you, and these are things I may need. How can you help me? What works, what doesn't? And having that curiosity that comes back and forth is a completely different shift, because I think before we had talked a little bit about, people can feel really defensive in the operating room.
Yes.
And we can wonder why, as surgeons, people aren't getting it or playing for our team or helping us do this and that. But we haven't stopped to ask what that experience is like from their standpoint.
You're making me think about so many things. And one example is, I'm hearing you say, just lead with curiosity. And because everyone has the same true north, like patient outcome. That's literally why we went into this job. But sometimes the surgeon feels like they have to shoulder all of that burden. I don't want to say burden, but weight of a good outcome. And I'm thinking about the way you're framing this to your scrub tech or your circulators, just trying to understand their perspective. It's making me think about a coaching interaction that I've seen before, where there was a surgeon that we were talking with about how he thought his team responded to him. And he was like, we get along really well. Like, we all talk really well. We communicate really well. I think we have a really good relationship. There was an external camera in the room filming this. And there was like the cleaning crew and everyone in the room getting ready for their case. And they're all like laughing and joking, and like they had some type of vibe going on. Then he walked in and everyone like got really uptight, right? Everyone got nervous and stopped talking. And when he saw this, it just made him understand and the impact he had on the room, or the vibe that he set maybe from previous interactions that we don't even know are there sometimes, without actually asking the right questions. Does that resonate when I tell that story?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, moving story. That's such a good coaching session because it's not right or wrong. For some of the cases, perhaps if we know it's going to be a difficult case or it's going to be technically complicated or something like that, maybe we want the vibe to be a little bit more serious. We're worried about a bad outcome or something like that. But I assume that surgeon didn't, he clearly didn't think that was a vibe. And being perceived in that way. And so it's about intentionally, like I think what you're saying, creating what you want in the operating room at certain times in certain places. And neither is right or wrong, but are we doing it intentionally or not?
Yeah. So you're making me go down the space of there are times that you can be more laid back. There are times when you need the room to tune into what you're doing. Sometimes the room picks up on that. Sometimes the room doesn't pick up on that. And it's bringing me to the space of shared mental models of making sure everyone on the team understands maybe from the grander scale expectations of different roles, but then on the finer scale, when potentially part of that procedure is higher risks or higher stress. What kind of tips or suggestions or insights do you have regarding getting everyone on the team in the same kind of wavelength?
Yeah. And I think something that you said earlier really resonates with me for this is that we put all the weight on ourselves. But yes, at the end of the day, we're absolutely responsible. But the team carries that weight for us. And so we can offload a little bit of that weight so we can focus on what we need to focus on for that patient. So I think that shared mental model of discussing beforehand, hey, this is the part I'm worried about, and these are the things that I may need. Or, hey, I know this is an operation that we do routinely, but it's different in this patient from this perspective. So I'm going to get quiet at this part, and that has nothing to do with the rest of the room, but don't assume that I'm feeling a certain way or this or that. I'm really trying to do my best for the patient. And I think that allows everyone to then also focus in and get really specific when they need to be, and then can also change the atmosphere. There's tons of data that we've seen all the time, as I think people will try to fight back against the corporatization of medicine and surgery, that teams that are familiar with each other and teams that have that psychological safety and trust perform better. When we get to work with an anesthesiologist that knows us and that we know, the patients have better outcomes.
Yes.
And so while I think the system's huge and it's hard to change. But who do we want to be in the system? How do we want to advocate for our patients? How do we want to advocate for ourselves? I think are important questions that we don't get the time and the space to explore.
Yes.
On our daily basis. And I think that's why coaching can be so valuable, right? How do I keep my meaning? How do I keep my purpose? How do I continue to be who I want to be in these environments?
Oh, yes. Like version of your best self, right? And I think about for me at the Cleveland Clinic, we are covering a lot of sites right now, right? I have 4 sites that I cover call on, probably more upcoming. I have 5 partners right now. We are running around. Most of our meetings are all virtual now because none of us are in the same spot a lot of the times. And I feel like when we're just go, 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 you're right. It takes reflection and work to improve. And we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our patients to do that. And again, we all went into this because we don't want to plateau. We want to go to our ideal state. And so I think you're bringing up a really good point that you need to take this space for ourselves, for our own fulfillment, but also for our patients.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think we can talk a lot about what leads to burnout, and I don't love the conversation about burnout more. But one of the parts of it, I think, is the loss of autonomy that we feel being part of a big system or private practice system that is corporatized or any of that kind of stuff. We don't think we have that same sense of autonomy anymore. And that sense of autonomy looks very different than it used to be, or than it is for some surgeons that are an independent private practice. Not that they don't have their own things that they need to worry about and think about, but getting really clear about where I have choice and where I don't have choice, and whether or not this job gives me enough choice or doesn't give me enough choice, or leans enough into my values or doesn't lean enough into my values, is what I feel is sort of the secret sauce to long-term well-being and long-term, really ability to provide the care that we want.
There's so many studies looking at, I mean, what you're saying hits me so hard to the core. There's so many studies looking at the number one dissatisfier in people is loss of autonomy.
Yeah.
Like when you feel like you don't have any more, like when we feel like you don't have control over whatever it is, your schedule or your OR teams or the instruments that you're using or whatever it may be, when you lose autonomy, that's when it feels like things can start slipping, right? And it all comes down to quality and safety for your patient. And I'm thinking about teamwork, and I'm thinking about your insight on when you have the same team, outcomes are better. Like, how many times do I ask for the wrong instrument? Don't give me what I'm asking for. Give me what I want, right?
I know. I always call. I actually start every operation by, I know I'm going to tell you what a hemostat, but I really want to cryo. So for this entire operation, every time I say hemostat, I actually mean cryo. And they're like, oh, thanks for telling me. Because then they try to hand me hemostat. I'm like, look at the size of the patient. They're like, but this is what you asked for. I'm like, that's not what I meant. Every time.
You are a pediatric surgeon. Your patients are teensy weensy. That is so funny though. But you're making me go to a space of, and I think about this a lot, is like a playbook for myself, right? Like even for my like teams, like outside the operating room, like as a leader or in the OR, like we all have our own quote unquote playbook, right? And so sharing that playbook probably helps with the mental models. Do you think so?
Absolutely. I always say before, I'm sure you do something like this, before I start an operation, I'm like, in order to keep me not cranky, someone put on some music. And it's like, when it's really quiet in the OR, I notice how tense I get. I'm like, oh my God, some must be going down. Yeah, it's going well. But I think that I've learned enough about myself, and there's a ton more that I can learn about myself from someone watching, giving me that technical feedback, giving me that interpersonal feedback, that what I'm doing to create the atmosphere that I want to create in the operating room. Because when things are difficult and not going well, it does help me if I don't feel like the person across from me is stressed out or, worrying about how to help me. If they're just like, yeah, you got this, that feels great, right? That gives me the space to not, I can't help it, worry about what the other person's thinking about me. And if I feel like we're in the fight together, if we're in the trenches together, that feels completely separate than feeling like I'm, alone on an island and everyone's judging me and looking at me.
Yes. And you're not alone in that. Sometimes there's teams that are just not your own team. And sometimes those conversations aren't as free flowing, and it impacts every part of the day. Like I talk about my OR being my temple. Like my OR is our sanctuary. I'm very much an empath. I pick up on all of the things in the room. Mm-hmm. And if there's a lot of that going on undercurrent wise, it impacts our performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that sometimes there may be gender differences in this, but I would argue that male surgeons feel exactly the same way. It's just there's a different expectation in medicine. And I think that if we all sort of came to the same understanding in terms of mental models, like in this case, we anticipate that like it's going to be difficult, or we anticipate it'll take a little bit longer because of whatever. Or today's a nice, easy day. Let's change the vibe in here. Let's get to know each other. Like maybe there's a little chance for chit chat. So when we have to work together in the future when it's hard, we have some common psychological safety and trust. I think it's really important to come into the OR with those ideas, even if you're not intentional about it every day. When you have the chance to be intentional about it, great. Your longevity is going to improve. You're going to want to be there more. You're going to be able to have a little bit of space where your brain's not taken up with that stuff, and you can focus on the things you do want to focus on.
Yes. So talk to me about, again, this area of coaching, improving efficiency. I think it's like the one-on-one coaching with efficiency is probably, I shouldn't say probably, maybe easier to comprehend like how that works. I'm thinking about our listeners listening to this saying, okay, team efficiency. What does that actually look like from an operations or from a detail-oriented standpoint? Like, how do we actually integrate this with teams? So I'm just curious, in your vast experience with coaching, have you seen any institutions integrating this from a team perspective, or is it more like coaching mindset and skill set that you learn from being a coach that you actually integrate in the OR?
Yeah, I hope that someday we'll get to where team coaching is a valuable resource for the operating rooms. I think in medicine, we're behind in terms of coaching. Like the business world has this figured out. And it's an important part for all their executives. And you could argue that as leaders in many spaces, doctors are similar to executives, and we should be training and thinking and working at that same level. We have that investment in us that they invest in C-suite executives of any business enterprise. So I haven't seen any great team coaching models. But what I also love about coaching is that it really brings you to the idea that while this is objective and measurable, to a certain extent, it's not. Like, it's all in your head. Like, you can believe anything you want to believe. And so how are we using that partially delusional belief, but in a good way, delusional belief?
Yes.
To the benefit of our patients and to the benefit of our team? What do we gain by having a negative self-talk model all the time? That sucked. That didn't go as fast as I wanted it to. Like, that may be true. Things didn't go as fast as you wanted it to. Okay, great. But instead of just like getting down on yourself, how can we be like, what worked? What didn't work?
Yeah.
And of those things that worked, how do I lean more into them to make that more of my routine for every case?
Yes. And I think about two aspects here. I think about one aspect being it's hard to do that on your own. Like having that self-reflection by yourself, you already have a bias, right? Of what happened and how you reacted, probably.
Yeah.
And so this is where I love my coach to show me my blind spots, be my mirror, get below the line, ask me the whys, right? Give me different perspectives. So I think you're nailing it, and having someone to talk with about that is critical. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is there's all these new platforms, all this new technology coming out with external cameras, right? With sometimes some audio, with intracorporeal views. And so how are we going to be able to use this data to actually bring us to the next level? We talk a lot about how data alone doesn't necessarily equal performance improvement. It's a two-way conversation around that data. So I'm really excited for the space of actually having objective video in regard to team dynamics, conversations in the room, all of that. And then how do we actually use that data, not to be punitive, but to actually raise teams to the next level?
Yeah, I think that's the next frontier, because I think I'm probably getting this stat wrong, but like 70% of communication is nonverbal.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Like, it doesn't matter who we're saying. It matters if we turned our back to that person when they were talking to us. It matters whether or not we made eye contact. Like, if we're standing like this versus, oh, okay. Like, it makes such a difference in how that team is working and functioning together. Like, I had a partner who was written up, really dinged by, like, there was a difficult patient to get IV access on and get intubated and all that stuff. And our anesthesiologist lost it, was so mad at my partner because my partner was in the back of the room with his legs crossed, sitting in the anesthesia chair with his feet up on the anesthesia machine.
Oh, God.
He did not mean anything by it. He's just like, I'm staying out of their way. I'm letting them do their thing. It's taking them an hour and a half. I'm not giving them any dogs. So he thought he was doing the right thing. But how that was perceived by the anesthesia team was, woof, they did not like. And my partner was literally like, I don't get it. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. I stayed out of their way. And anesthesia team was like, they were so arrogant and they were so rude and like blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And you can see how things like that can be just totally misconstrued. It gives a chance for repair too, right? Like, hey, this was my intention. I'm sorry it came off that way when we review this video. It also gives what's going on in the anesthesia team's brain. Like, I'm sweating here, like, either don't be in the room or help me or give me some positive feedback or just like, again, right? What would have worked best for them? Because obviously we're a team that's going to continue to work together.
That is such a good example. There are like 9,000 learning points from that one example.
Yeah.
Like, can I ask you, your colleague, you had his or her legs up on the anesthesia machine. Was it a female or male? May I ask?
It was a male.
I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about from the anesthesia standpoint, right? They're sweating. And so when you think about the bandwidth, right, of how, like, what bandwidth you have left to process other things, their stress probably took all their bandwidth, then very little left to the guy sitting in the back with his legs up, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I'm thinking about your partner. I don't obviously know who it is or what he's like, but he usually is like all over them. So he was like actually winning by standing back. He was like giving himself back, like patting himself on the back, and then he got written up.
Yeah.
God.
I was being so chill, And they're like, no, that was not chill. That was not good.
And the 10th lesson for that is, isn't it amazing that people write people up but don't just have a conversation?
Yeah.
Like that blows I hear that everywhere and especially in coaching sessions. But it blows my mind that as like grown adults that we don't just talk about it, but we write people up for that type of thing.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really great point too. We may or may not ever want to be in a formal leadership role, but we are absolutely in a leadership role if you are a surgeon in an operating room. Like you may love it or hate it or feel neutral about it, but you are the leader of that team. And so how can we work on our individual leadership skills to be able to model for other people? We don't know who's watching us, to model for our residents and students and to model for ourselves. I think technology such as all this video reporting and, technical skills reporting is important, but at the end of the day, we're still people. Like technology will never take the place of our human interactions. And this is probably going a tiny bit far afield, but Dr. Murthy wrote about that the biggest epidemic in the United States is loneliness because we don't want to talk to each other. So if we can form teams and that we're social animals that need to be part of a tribe and a group. I think I saw some meme somewhere. Can't remember where I saw it, where the surgery team is always like a big herd of sharks, like walking through the hospital. We'll never see a lone surgeon, but we like to think of ourselves as individuals, but we are very much part of a team, and we can't do our job without the rest of the team. We can't take care of a patient without the rest of our team. So if we can strengthen those dynamics and strengthen our dynamics with other people through being able to have these uncomfortable conversations or these difficult conversations without interjecting that technology or just writing each other up or that whole punitive atmosphere, like it's just better for everyone. We feel better at work, they feel better at work, and we're all capable of having difficult conversations. We do it with our patients all the time.
Exactly. And I'm hearing you say, I love the shark analogy. I'm hearing you say like we're a cohort amongst ourselves, but say within your subspecialty, maybe at your hospital. But I think what's really magical about the academy is we have almost 400 coaches trained on an international scale out in all subspecialties. And so I think a really cool bond that can happen is actually partnering you with someone totally outside your subspecialty, outside your state, sometimes outside your country, and understanding that these themes actually run through everybody. And I think that actually, for me, has been one of the most magical spaces of the academy, and that we're connecting people on in a strong international way to make sustainable change in people's practices. And I think that's a really cool part of us.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It's something that every time I look at the list of coaches, I'm like, wow. This is so amazing. And I think that it's so great that even if they're not in your specialty, they're all surgeons. You don't have to explain the operating room. You don't have to explain like X, Y, and Z happened. You can just say these words, vomit it out. And I'm just like, I see you, I get you. Even if I haven't done that particular, even if I don't do that particular operation, like I get you,
Yes. I don't mean to be like hokey pokey woo woo, but you just gave me a little bit of goosebumps because there's something to be said about not having to explain yourself. You can literally, I can say to you right now, Ami, my case this morning, we rolled 20 minutes late back and it was a team I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
I don't need to say anything else.
Yeah. And we're all like, I get you. I sympathize with you.
And I think there's just something to be said for that takes some of like the weight off trying to explain. We don't have to justify our emotions. It's just known. And that feels really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my friend. So to conclude our incredible session today, I'd love for you to help our listeners walk away from this conversation with maybe one major concept. So if you could share, if you want someone from this episode just to remember one thing that we talked about, what theme do you want to resonate with them?
Yes. I would really, it's going to be annoying because it's a question and not an answer because we all like answers. But I would ask, what is efficiency to you? Like, can you write it down? Have you made it something measurable? What goal are you trying to get to in the operating room in terms of efficiency? What does that mean to you? And what is that goal? How could you tell me what that goal is? And then it's something that's checkable and markable. Not just like pie in the sky idea that everyone thinks I'm efficient. No, you know,
Yes.
how, like old school, when we had our list when we were interns and residents, can I check that box off? Like I repleted the K, check, you know?
Yes. I'm still a checkboxer. Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that question. And I think even to take it one like level deeper, if that's sometimes that might be too overwhelming, we're gonna attach the performance metrics to this episode. And I think it'd be really great for that question, maybe to be paired with the boxes of technical, non-technical, stress management, communication, and break down what does efficiency look like to you? What does it mean to you in those performance metrics? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's amazing because I know that I can't do that alone. I know that I need a coach to help me do that because there are certain things that I take that I just state that are facts. And my coach is like, oh, really? That's a fact. He told you that. How do you know that? And I'm like, oh, that's not a fact. I just made that up. And like, that's a rule that I've been living by, but that's actually not a rule or based on anything other than how I've decided to think about this.
Yes.
So I think that's amazing for people to really start thinking about on their own. And then a great topic to try out with a coach that's part of the Academy of Surgical Coaching. Like, here are some of the things I thought about. Help me poke holes in things or help me solidify. No, that's true. And I want to believe that.
I love that. I know you say things with confidence, they become fact for me too. I'm like, oh wait, I just said it really confidently, but it's not true maybe.
Yeah. So
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Ami. And if anyone's interested in learning more about the Academy, please jump on our website. We'll have everything linked in our show notes today. We'd love to have you in regard to the coaching aspect. If you want to go through our training or from a coachee aspect, we'd love to bring you into the fold. So thank you all so much for listening.
All right. Thanks, Karen.
Bye.